All right, boys and girls, it's that time. We've got our freshly powder coated frame back. We are ready to do final assembly on the Sportster chopper. So this has been a long time coming, and for those of you who have been watching the whole series, I definitely appreciate it. And I think this video is gonna be the payoff video, where hopefully we're all gonna see a fully assembled bike by the end of this video. So with the frame freshly back from powder coat, we've got a couple little things we need to do to get it prepped to get the motor in. We've taken care of most of that. So anytime you get something back from powder coating, you want to check all of your holes and threads and make sure everything is clean. Run taps through anywhere to get any residual powder coat out of there. Blow it all off, wipe it off really good. We cleaned out our spots where the neck bearing races are gonna go. So this frame is pretty much ready. The only other thing I wanna do before we start getting the motor put in is, if you recall from the last video, we drilled some holes to run some wiring through the backbone. I'm gonna run some kind of like pull-through wires into these holes now, in case it's a little bit difficult to do it and we have to kind of move the frame around and to jiggle those wires through. It'll be easier to do that without the motor in. So we'll have wires that we can tape our harness through to pull it through. So that's the next step we're gonna take care of. Then we're gonna get some tape put on the areas that might contact the motor. Motor still has tape on it from the disassembly, if you remember that. Hopefully you can see that back there. And then we'll go ahead and get the motor in. And once the motor's in, it's basically just a matter of the same thing as we did before, kind of with mock-up, except now it's final assembly. Everything is gonna get put on permanently, hopefully. But we'll get the motor in and we'll start building around it. So I'm real excited to get going on this video and to see this bike come together in its final form. So I hope you guys are too. So stick around, should be a good one. So basically what we want to do is like tilt this like this and slide it as far towards you as we can. There we go. Just make sure it doesn't go off the edge. We good? Yep. Okay, well, that was maybe not the most elegant motor install to a frame you've ever seen, but got it in on one shot, didn't scratch anything, didn't even touch anything, honestly. But we've got it in, it's pretty stable. So at this point, just kind of gonna get it moved around on the lift and we'll start to get the motor bolted back in, which I think you've seen me do at least twice at this point, but you'll see it hopefully one more and one final time. All right, so with the motor in and all bolted down, that actually went really smoothly as expected. So, all the different motor mounts lining up, 1, 2, 3, 4, no issues with any bolt alignment or anything like that. Basically means everything is going in nice and straight and everything is as it was supposed to be. So that's in, Loctited, torqued, good to go. So there's a lot of things you can kind of do from here, you know, in terms of order of operations for getting this thing put together. But for me, I want this a little bit more secure on the lift rather than just kind of sitting here on this wood block. So I think my plan of attack from this point is we're gonna go ahead and get a jack or 2 jacks under this. We'll get the front end assembled and we'll get the front end put on, and then we can get the front wheel clamped down in the vise on the table, and then just have a jack under the rear so we can work on everything else back here. All right, so first step in getting the front end final installed is gonna be to get the new bearing races installed into the frame. So we've got the surfaces all cleaned out in here, like I mentioned before. We take our new races, all nice and cleaned up, and get those pressed in. And we're gonna use our Fast Eddie Co tool to do the pressing. I almost never get to use this tool the way it was meant to be used because we almost always have a tank on the bike in the way. But when you got a bare frame like this, you can use the handle to turn it just like this, and these bearings go in super easily. All right, now that we got the races put in, I put some grease around the faces of them. Also took the bearings, put them in the bearing packer. This is kind of what the bearing looks like right when it comes out. So you can see the grease gets forced in through the cages, through the rollers, and comes out on the opposite side of it here. So you get all that grease on the inside where you want it. Then you can take what's left on the top side there, or bottom side, I guess depending on how you're looking at it. And I like to just put that around the outside of the rollers to make sure we've got full coverage everywhere on the bearing. So this one is gonna be for the top. I've already done the bottom one and pressed that onto the steering stem. All right, so the bearing all greased up now. Just gonna drop it in place right up here. And I've got a little bit of extra on my finger from what I wiped off there. I don't think we need any more. I'm actually gonna wind up just cleaning this up just a little bit. And we're good on the top one. Now I'm gonna grab the lower tree with the bearing already pressed on it, slide it up in there, and put the top tree on, and we'll have our steering head sort of assembled. Okay, so here are our trees, freshly back from polishing. These look so good. I mean, the fingerprints I'm getting all over them are not doing them any favors, but before I started smudging them up, they looked awesome. So we're gonna slide these in, like I said. Okay, get that to drop in there. And we'll put our top tree on. Whoop, forgot one piece before that top tree goes on. Hopefully that'll just sit right there. It's not gonna. Don't forget the dust shield. All right, now, top tree. And that's actually just sitting right there. We've got to get our bolt put in, but that's more or less how it's going to look. So I'm going to wash my hands off, wipe these down, and get at least just the initial tension put on these so they stay in place. All right, so with our trees on, I've got them a little over tightened on the stem here just to hold them in place so I can put my legs in, and then we'll get an initial kind of fall away set here to the final adjustment later, but I just want to get it close once we get the legs on. Then really I want to see the front wheel on this thing. So let's go. Not touching, but damn are they close. All right, so with the front wheel on, hopefully you can see this on the camera. This was a piece that was missing when we did the mock-up. This is just a little hub cover that's on here. It's it was made by Tracker Die before when Tracker Die still existed. I don't know if the new Tracker Die, which is Till Death Cycles, I want to say. I don't know if they're making them too, but it's got this kind of like industrial sort of cutout look. I think matches the wheel really well. The only issue with it was that it came in like a satin black. I might have showed this to you in a previous video, I don't know. But we got it powder coated when we did the frame to gloss, and I think it looks just perfect on the wheel. The clearance between the fork leg and the screws is, I don't know, like maybe like a grain of rice. It's super close, but it's not touching, so I'm gonna run it. So the plan now is we're gonna just take it off the front jack and sort of nudge it with the rear jack and get the whole bike to move forward so we can lock it in with the vise. But for two reasons. One, because it'll make that easier, and two, because I just want to do it. Before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and put the bars on, because I'm excited to see what that's gonna look like. It'll also make it easier to hold the bike upright as we kind of nudge it forward into the vise. So bars and moving this thing forward are next. All right, one quick break in the action for me to ask you all one big favor. So I hope you guys are all really loving the content. I hope you keep coming back and watching more. To help us help you to deliver more content, please do me a favor, hit the like button, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel, do all those things that have a huge impact for us and don't cost you guys anything but a second of your time. It's a big help and helps us to keep delivering content to you guys, and I really appreciate it. So that's all I want to ask you. Back to the video. All right, so our next step here is gonna be to put the rear wheel on. Now, this might be a little bit out of order, but I just want the bike sitting on two wheels. I want the chain on so that I can judge how we're gonna run wiring and make sure we're not gonna get in the way of any of that. And I think just being able to visually see the chain will help to make sure nothing will get in the way of that. So that maybe alludes to what the next thing we're gonna tackle is, which is wiring. So I'm gonna get this rear wheel put on and then we're gonna start wiring. So we'll do that and we'll come right back. All right, so with that rear wheel back on and the chain back on, I think it's time to throw this sprocket cover on. And sprocket cover will look a little different than you last saw it. Beautiful, high polished job on that. I don't know that I've never seen anybody, I don't think, polish one of these TC Brothers covers. I'm sure somebody has, but I think it looks killer and it's gonna match really well with the rest of this stuff here. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this on. This is all steps towards wiring, I promise. There's a lot of little details we gotta figure out, and I just like to do it in a certain order, so you'll see. All right, so now it's time to start getting some of our modules in place so we can figure out the routing of these harnesses. So I've got two things I want to do while we're down here. One is I want to get the voltage regulator bolted up onto the front of the frame, and the other is I want to get the ignition module installed into the nose cone. We can get this harness run as well. So I'm gonna start with the ignition module, then with the voltage regulator, then we'll come back and we'll put the, there's a rotor that's gotta go in here, and then the ignition module goes in on top of that. So we'll knock this out, come back and knock this out, then we'll start figuring out how we're gonna start running some of these harnesses. I think the camera might have just shut off there, but I just got the voltage regulator bolted in place, and I was explaining what we did with the wires coming out of it. We've got this two-prong plug here that's gonna connect to the bike harness that goes to the stator. And then this side had a single pin plug on it that I cut off and soldered this wire on that we're gonna run back to the battery to charge it, obviously. Now, obviously, we've got to tuck all these in finally and zip tie them and do all of that. But for the moment, I'm just going to get everything laid out. We've obviously got a lot more to do. That was just our first wire. So we'll get everything in place, then we'll figure out how to tuck it all in. So like I mentioned, the next thing I want to do is get our nose cone set up here. So I'll do that right now. All right, so that's all I'm gonna do for now. I'm leaving this loose. We obviously have to time this still. We need power to do that, so we're gonna come back. I'm hoping I've got enough slack in the wires here. I was just trying to make sure I could still just kind of move this around, because that's how you set the timing, just to make sure we've got the full range of motion in those timing slots there. I think we're good, I hope we are. But anyway, now that that's there, and we've kind of got some of these bottom wires, we can start to figure out the best way to route them up. So I guess I can kind of show you what I'm thinking. I'm trying to decide if I want to run, we've got a couple more wires to do actually, but if we want to run up kind of this way or stay low underneath and come up the backside. I think coming up the backside probably will be cleaner. Although I don't know, there's already a harness right here for the stator. So if we kind of run in that way and under the starter, maybe come up this side, I don't know. I just got to figure it out and see what looks best. The other wires we need to run, if you remember from our earlier discussion of wiring, we've got our oil pressure light sender, which is up here in the front. Not sure if you can see my hand, it's right below the oil filter. And then the neutral indicator is right back here. So I've got two wires to go on there with the factory little plugs and boots to go on. We'll add some wire to these to make them longer. We'll join them up with the rest of this wire we've got here, and we'll figure out the best way to run them up to our kind of center of the action here. Obviously the ignition wires are gonna have to continue on, and the light wires are gonna continue on even further. That's why I've got the holes in the backbone. But we're just starting to get it mapped out now, and I guess I'll show you what I figure out. All right, so I've been digging in on the wiring here, made a good amount of progress. Figured I'd stop here and kind of show you guys what I've been doing before I get too carried away and just get it all done. I'll start by saying Throttle Addiction, which is, if you recall, who we got the hardtail kit from, they make a wiring harness, which is like a simplified chopper wiring harness that basically does almost everything we're doing here, minus maybe the indicator lights. However, in our particular application, it really is not helpful. And I did buy one just so I could see kind of what it looked like and whatever. It's a pretty basic thing and it's no big deal, but basically if you're running your ignition switch on your bike up here by the coil, rather than back here like we are, it'll work pretty well for you. In our case, we're not doing that. If you recall, it basically had to do with the fact that I wanted to keep the factory tank, which meant we couldn't put the ignition switch here, which is why we put it here. So it's perhaps maybe a less common scenario than most. So that harness probably would be helpful for a lot of people. In our case, it's really not. The other thing is, there are very few parts to a wiring harness for a chopper. So if one or two things aren't applicable, then that's kind of it. The other thing that I have in that harness, which is kind of cool, is it's provisioned for a brake light switch and then two wires to run to your back of your rear fender for your tail light to control your tail light and brake light functions. In our case, we're using a single wire setup. We'll show you that when we get to installing it. That's from Prism. So that's another piece of the harness that doesn't really work for us. So it's just easier in my case to just do it from scratch. So all that said, I kind of had a thought of what makes sense for me to do here, how specifically should I go through all of this, kind of step by step with you guys, or just kind of show you what I'm doing? And where I landed was, I'm not gonna bore you guys or go through all the minute details of every single wire and every single connection, because every bike is different and it's not gonna be that helpful to you. If you're trying to wire a chopper and you've got questions, there's a million wiring diagrams out there. This really isn't very complicated. The only part that's complicated is figuring out how you wanna run the wires and making it as clean as you possibly can. So that's what we're up to right now. So where we left off was we had kind of our main stuff down here figured out, and I was getting ready to run it up through the backbone. So It's going to be a little harder to see now because the wires have been run, but we've got our wires that lead all the way up here. I guess you can see this up top here. So we've got 4 wires coming up here that are going to be under the tank, and then they're going to come out and go up to our headlight bucket. So we've got power, ground, and then the 2 switch wires. One is brake light, one is oil pressure and neutral switch. So those 4 wires come down here. The 2 switch wires come down this way, and then we've got the power and ground wires just chilling here till we're ready for them. The other harness is the harness that comes off of the ignition, and that runs up here into this same hole and then drops out here and comes out right here. Maybe you can kind of see it. One of those wires connects to the VOES, which some people decide they don't want to run just to keep it more simple, but since we do have a performance motor here, the VOES is a good thing. It's not, you know, like, oh, you put that in, it's there for emissions. What this is gonna do is allow the ignition to know when the engine is under load, which allows it to adjust ignition timing, which is a good thing. It gives you more control over the motor and over timing. So that is one wire off of there, goes into that harness. The other wire goes to ground, and then the vacuum line is going to connect onto the carburetor. So I've got that wired in. We can go to the other side, and I'll kind of show you what's left of that. All right, so the other side of the wiring for the ignition, pretty simple. So we've got 4 wires here. There's a 5th wire that we cut. That's a green one that goes, if you're running a tach, that'll send the tach signal. We're not. So we've got 2 white wires here. One of them is sending is 12-volt power from the battery to the coil. And the other one is taking that same 12-volt power and sending it down to the ignition module. And then we've got our blue and pink wires here, which, because this is a single-fire ignition, it is our front and rear trigger wires for the coil for the front and rear spark plugs. So these wires get attached on these posts, and then we'll get our coil in like this, and we just gotta make up some short spark plug wires, and then this will be done. Probably won't do the spark plug wires right now, but I'm at least gonna get these connected so we can bolt this on here, and we'll be done with this little piece, and move on to finding some more wiring to do. All right, so after getting the ignition coil done, I went through and did a whole bunch more wiring here. Basically got most of it connected. So kind of got everything tidied in terms of the main harness kind of running up the backbone here. Got our brake light switch connected, got our harness for our rear lights. That's gonna be tail light and brake light. I don't know if you can see here, we've got a little Prism Supply 1-wire controller. It's looking a little bit like a spaghetti mess back in here, but we'll get this all cleaned up once I get the ignition switch put on. So it's kind of the last little bit of wiring I have to do other than getting the main positive and negative cables put on the battery. Got all these wires kind of just sticking through here where the ignition is gonna go. So basically we've got main power coming in from the circuit breaker. I've got a, what do we got here? This is our brake light, tail light wire. Got this green guy, which is, I have no idea, probably should have checked. Oh, this is gonna be the start button wire, so to the trigger for the starter motor. Got this white wire, which is the power for the ignition and ignition coil. And this white and blue kind of dotted wire is the one that runs up to here, and it's gonna be the power for the lights. So pretty simple, pretty clean, not a ton of wires you gotta worry about here. We do have a little bit going on with the brake light so that we can only run 1 wire for that. I guess I can go to the other side and show you what we did. But the first thing to see would actually be here. So normally in a situation like this, you would run a banjo bolt brake light switch off the master cylinder. And I didn't want to do that. Number 1, because I just didn't like how it looked here. It kind of stuck out too far, but also we were going to have a clearance issue with the pipe, and having those teeny little wires this close to our exhaust, I think was just asking for trouble. So the pipe kind of comes up and around here, and we've got this sort of up and pointed out of the way, not going to be in the way of the chain and not going to be in the way of the pipe. So we're good on the brake line on this side. I did get this hooked up so we could hook up the other side as well. So let me show you that now, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here's where our brake line comes across, and you might be able to see it, you might not. We've got a little teeny wires here that are taped up and running along the brake line going to the brake light switch banjo bolt that instead of putting on the master, I put it onto the caliper. So you can see it here a little bit, but I think it's way less in the way, way less in your face. And it still works, obviously. Pressure is pressure, and that's how these switches are activated. So whether it's here or there, it works the same. So basically what happens is when the pressure switch closes, it's going to connect these two wires that are here, and those two wires are connected to the prism controller here. All right, so here's our little prism controller. These two orange wires are connected to the brake light switch. It's got two red wires on the other side. One of them is going to go to switched power, and the other one is not connected to anything yet. That's this guy, and this is going to run up our fender and is going to connect to the taillight. And the beauty of this little setup is, if you care, is that rather than running 2 or even 3 wires to your taillights, you need a ground if the taillight itself isn't going to ground through the case. But you need a taillight wire, a running light, and a brake light wire. What this does is the way it operates the LED taillight is essentially it's doing a low power, high power thing. So with the brake light switch open, this will just be sending a low power signal, so you'll get a running light. And when the brake light switch closes, you put your foot on the brake, it's gonna throw the switch in here, and it's gonna send the higher power through this wire. So through one wire, you'll get both functions. So for a chopper like this, I just thought that was a clean way to do it. Prism's been making these for a while. I think they're super cool, so I just wanted to use one. So other than that, I mean, that's kind of where we're at on the wiring. I do have the ignition switch still to do, and then I didn't mention it, but we still also have the headlight and the indicator lights to get wired up as well. So I think we'll do, well, I'm not sure which one of those we'll do first, but that'll be the next thing you see, so stick around. All right, so I said I wasn't sure what was gonna be next, whether it was gonna be the key switch or getting the headlight stuff done. Decided to do the headlight. So hopefully you can see here, we used to have a bunch of wires sticking out here. What I decided to do was cut these wires short and add a Molex plug on here. So the plan is the way the tank sits, if you remember, it's kind of up off the backbone and there's space under here. So I wanted to, although the wiring is very simple, I decided, given it's not too difficult to do here, add this plug in to make the headlight so that it's still removable as one piece. So I'll show you what I did on the headlight side. So there's the headlight, and there's the harness coming out of it with the other end of that Molex connector. So the headlight is wired as a constant on, and it's the high beam. We'll aim it a little lower than a high beam would normally be, so hopefully it doesn't blind people too badly. And then I've got my LED indicators up here. It's probably the first time you're seeing that. So obviously green is our neutral light, and red is the oil pressure light. And all those connections are made inside the headlight bucket to get the right power, right ground, all that. So then we got our 4 wires coming out here. So the plan is to bolt this on here. And then this is obviously longer than it needs to be. My intention is to kind of have this harness go this way. I'm hoping there's enough room to get it to do that under the tank. I'm a little worried with the size of this connector that if I point it this direction, that it might stick out and you might be able to see it from under the tank, and I definitely don't want that. If it doesn't work this way, if there's not enough room, I can always do this and then just sort of wrap the cord around so that we don't have all this extra. But the plan is to have it go that way, double back over, come out of the tank, and then just have a little loop here just like you'd have on any other bike. So that's the plan. I'm just gonna get this bolted on, and then the next thing is gonna be getting the key switch hooked up. And at that point, I've done a bunch of testing of a lot of these individual pieces to make sure everything works and the wires are good. Like I checked this plug, the connections are good in it. I know these lights work, I know the headlight works. Once we get the key switch wired up, we'll be able to test some complete circuits and make sure things work as they're actually wired. So I'm gonna bolt this on, and then we'll come back when we got the key switch ready to go. I'll show you how that goes and keep moving. All right, so here we are over at the key switch. I got everything all simplified down. So we've got our kind of thicker wire here is gonna be our battery input power. Then we've got our yellow wire here, which is our rear lights, or rear light, I should say. We've got our 2 wires merged together here into one terminal just to keep it as clean as I can on the switch. And these 2 wires, one is our front lights and the other is the ignition. And then the green wire is the starter exciter wire. So I've got little ring terminals put on all these. Just got to get it connected on the back of this switch here. get the switch put in place, and we'll be kind of ready to test this. I'm still waiting on my positive battery cable to go from the battery directly to the starter. Don't need that in order to test everything else. Obviously, we won't be able to test the starter, but I'm not interested in trying to fire this motor or turn it yet. So it's actually fine we don't have that. So I'll be able to test everything else and make sure it works. So we'll be ready to go. So I'm just gonna go ahead and throw these on here and we'll make it happen. All right, so with the key switch in there, that is pretty much it on our wiring other than, like I mentioned, the main positive battery cable and this wire coming back to our taillight. So at this point, I can kind of test some of this. I won't do that on camera because it's gonna be a little bit awkward because I don't have a whole lot of things plugged in. But I guess the headlight you'll be able to see. Here, I'll turn this a little bit because that headlight should come on. So if we turn our key switch, we should get a headlight, theoretically. Look at that. So let's see if we're getting anything else. So I don't see an oil pressure light, although we probably should see an oil pressure light, given that there is no oil pressure. So we'll have to figure out what's going on there. And then the neutral light, transmission is probably not in neutral. But I'm gonna go through, I'll check this stuff and let you guys know what we figured out. All right, so I came over to the left side of the bike, might have got a little carried away, didn't film some of this stuff, but I wanted to get the primary buttoned up, figured you guys didn't need to see that. So we got fluid in, primary chain adjusted, covers on, threw the foot peg on, threw the shifter on, obviously the clutch cable is in as well. So where I want to go from here, now that we've kind of got this buttoned up, we've got the wiring done, I still don't have my tins, so I'm a little limited in what I can do. So I think maybe what I want to do now is come up to the bars and get the grips, throttle cable, get that put on. We'll get the carburetor put on, maybe get the air cleaner put on. We'll start to button up some of the stuff that we can that's here. So just wanted to kind of show you this side of it. We'll jump maybe back over to the other side. We'll get the nose cone cover put on. I did the timing on it too, which I didn't show you on camera because there's a million videos on how to do that, and I'm not trying to do a how-to on, you know, wiring or ignition timing or anything in this. That's just not what this is about. It's about the build, so just trying to keep things moving for you guys to keep the video interesting and the pace good. So hopefully you guys will keep watching and stick around till the end. So anyway, I think we'll move back over to the other side and we'll get the carb on, and then we'll start moving up to the handlebars and start to hopefully get our lines and cables wrapped up. So let's make it happen. So it's the little things that really do it for me. And I was really pumped to find a new old stock 100th anniversary timing cover. I don't know, there's no price on here from what this cost when this was for sale initially, I guess in 2003. But I found it on eBay, and I'm sure I probably paid about triple what it cost back then. But it's brand new. It's obviously original Harley, which I dig. Oh, I just broke the package. No longer worth anything. But anyway, hopefully you can see that. It's got the 100th anniversary logo on there, which I think on a bike like this is just super cool. So that's gonna go in there. Pretty simple, just put the original backing plate in, and then we'll just screw the cover into that. All right, there it is. I just think that's really goddamn cool. Little OG new old stock part. Okay, let's move on to something a little bit more interesting, I guess. Let's get this carburetor put on, air cleaner, and we can start to get the bars done up there. So let's make it happen. All right, let's go ahead and put this carb on. So we've got a new seal here. And we'll just take the carb and stick it on. installed. Kind of crazy that that's all it is. Obviously, the bracket, your air cleaner backing plate will connect the carburetor to the heads, but nothing to bolt it onto the intake manifold, which is just kind of interesting. So just looking here, we've got a vacuum line that's got to get connected here. So I think this one's going to be the right length. Yep, that'll work. So this initially didn't connect directly onto here. There was a little Y in there, and it had a vacuum operated petcock as well. So we eliminated that. So just put that right into there. So that works fine. Actually, you know what? I did not route the choke cable properly. So let's pull that back off. Flip that around, put that through there. Let's try that again. Man, it's crazy what a tight fit that is. Maybe the air cleaner will pull it up a little, but it basically touches just kind of everywhere. Here, here, that's it, yeah, so it's just a really tight fit. Interesting. I've got a fuel line here. Obviously we've got no tank. We don't really know exactly how long this needs to be, but I was thinking it might be easier to route this before the air cleaner goes on, although I don't really know if that's true or not. It probably will be easier to put this on here if we do it now. I just don't know exactly where I want it to go. It's probably gonna go this way, right up here, just like that. And then we're gonna need to put the inline filter in somewhere. So we've got a little, just clear filter to go in there. Again, I don't know exactly where the best place for this to go is. It's probably right in here. There seems to be some room. So maybe it makes sense to do that, put a short piece on with the filter, then leave the rest of this long on the other side. So let's do that. I'm gonna get a little bit of oil just to lubricate this a little bit so this will go on easier. We'll get a little clamp, we'll put that on, we'll get our filter put in, do all that. And then maybe throttle cable next, and then we'll throw our air cleaner on. And I haven't seen the air cleaner in person yet, it's still in the box, so we're gonna see together if this is gonna look decent or not. All right, so got the fuel line on, kind of routed under here, little fuel filter in line there. Then I got the excess just coiled up on the other side. We'll cut that to length, like I said, when the fuel tank comes in. Got our choke routed. We've got a choke bracket on the other side of the bike. I'll show that to you. The next thing I want to do is put the throttle cable on. So I've just got that hanging here. I haven't connected it on the top yet or anything. See, it's still loose. So I think, if I remember correctly, our routing is going to be, I think this way, just under the tank, although maybe we'll go through, I think we'll go this way. We'll go through the tank bracket right here. We'll see how that works out, but in any event, we can get this side connected. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do this without just pulling the carburetor back out, but I might be able to. Let's see what we can do here. Yeah, we got it. Just pop that in there. That like that. Pull some slack out, and we should have functioning throttle. All right, so we're good there. And I think from here, what I'm gonna do, like I said, is we'll just get the air cleaner put on. We'll deal with the throttle cable when we move up to the handlebars, but I think we should be pretty good at this point to put our air cleaner on. So let's take a look at it and cross our fingers and hope it looks cool. All right, well, there's our backing plate on. So far, I think this is looking pretty good. It's not too huge. And everything actually is lining up pretty well. We got a little bit more clearance here than we had before. That backing plate helps to line everything up. And we're not quite touching over here, although it's about paper thin clearance between the side of the carb and the head here. But I think this is pretty good. So now all we've got to do is get the filter element, and that's the part of this air cleaner that's a little different than most. So let's put that on and see how it looks. All right, well, there's our air cleaner installed. That was about as easy as doing an air cleaner could possibly be. Pretty nice, easy, simple design, obviously from Arlen Ness. So this is an unusual looking air cleaner, I grant you. Probably not something I would have chosen for any other bike, but I guess hear me out and I'll try to explain what my logic was here. So we got two things working pulling in opposite directions from each other for what I want to do. One is we have a chopper, and normally on a chopper you have the smallest, littlest, most inconspicuous air cleaner you can imagine. Problem with that is they don't function very well. Good enough for a stock motor, and that's what most choppers have, is an unworked, usually pretty clapped, just, you know, running Sportster motor in there. So put whatever air filter you want on it and it'll be fine. But for us, we're trying to do a performance motor at the same time, so you definitely want a little bit bigger of an air cleaner than one of those teeny little, you know, chopper ones. But on the other hand, like, you know, I didn't want some huge thing on here, and I also don't think it really needs it. But on Sportsters in general, I think they look better with smaller air cleaners. And this, to me, sort of had kind of a halfway between look of a small kind of chopper-looking air cleaner, but with like a modern flair to it, and obviously more of a performance bent with this, you know, sort of, you know, side cut angled thing here. And also not exactly a velocity stack on the inside, but at least a little bit of, you know, effort going into planning the airflow route. So I'm hoping this air filter works well. I think it looks kind of cool. I'm not sure about it yet. But I think once we have the tank on, you know, that sort of covers up some of this area, be able to get a better sense of that. But for now, I think I'm digging it. So I guess we'll just kind of go from here and see what happens. So I think our next step here is to move up to the handlebars and start to get some of these lines and cables connected. All right, let's go ahead and get our lines and cables hooked up and get our handlebars finalized. I've got a mirror here to go on. I've got some grips, levers, brake line. Got to get that throttle cable hooked up. So get the bike lowered down and get these bars looking tight. All right, so with the handlebars done, all our lines and cables on, grips done, brake bled, I've got one little cherry to go on this delicious sundae here. And that is, if you remember from the very beginning of this series, this little emblem that was on the, I can't remember which cover it was on, I think maybe on the battery cover, that I said, hey, that's really cool, I'm gonna peel that off there and steal it and use it for something. Well, the something is here. I've got this little plate right here, and we've got some of that hardcore 3M tape on the back of this. And I think this thing is gonna look perfect on this bike right there. So I'm gonna peel this off, get this stuck on. All right, well, with our killer little badge on there, that is unfortunately where we're gonna have to end this video. I was really hoping that we'd have the tins back in time to get them in on this video. I was really hoping to get the tanks on, get the fenders on, let you all see the final outcome of this, and maybe even get it fired up and get it tuned. But unfortunately, I'm still waiting on paint. I'm sure a lot of you know how that goes. So really nothing I can do about it. I wanted to get this video out, and I'm sure that it's plenty long for you all already. So stick around for one more part in this series where we will get the tins put on and get the bike fired up. So I hope you guys are digging how it's coming out. Obviously, I couldn't be happier about it. I'm just stoked about everything. So if you're liking this series, like I said, please drop us a comment or a like below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. It's a big help to us. Once again, I appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one.